4-year-old Gizmondo. In 2005, the Gizmondo launched with the kind of hype you'd expect from a tech giant. But it wasn't Apple or Sony behind this. It was a mysterious Swedish company called Tiger Telematics. Their device promised the world: GPS, multimedia messaging, and cutting-edge 3D gaming. It even had a built-in camera and a bizarre ad-supported version to lower the price. But from day one, it was a disaster. Games were scarce, the price was outrageous at $400, and the interface was bulky. Reviews were brutal, and retail support evaporated almost instantly. Only 14 games ever released, but what truly buried the Gizmondo wasn't just bad hardware, it was the scandal behind it. Executives were caught in a money laundering scheme, ties to the Swedish mafia emerged, and one executive is famously remembered for crashing a Ferrari Enzo at over 160 miles an hour. Within a year, Tiger Telematics went bankrupt. The Gizmondo sold fewer than 25,000 units worldwide. Today, it's remembered less as a console and more as a project of ambition without direction. It had all the flash, but none of the foundation. Steam Machine. In 2015, Valve tried to redefine console gaming with the launch of the Steam Machine, a series of living room-friendly PCs made by third-party manufacturers and powered by Steam OS. It sounded like a dream, the flexibility of PC gaming combined with the accessibility of a console. But in reality, it was an awkward mess. There was no single model, just a confusing lineup of machines from brands like Alienware and Zotac, ranging wildly in specs and price. Some cost as little as $500, while others shot up to $2,000, with no clear messaging on what players were actually buying. The Steam controller also confused users, trying to reinvent gamepad design with touchpads that didn't quite deliver. To make things worse, Steam OS didn't support many of the most popular games, and performance often lagged behind Windows. Developers weren't on board, and consumers were left wondering why they shouldn't just buy a gaming PC or stick with PlayStation and Xbox. By 2018, Valve quietly removed Steam machines from its store, and the entire initiative faded into obscurity. What could have been a bold console-PC hybrid ended up as a forgotten experiment that never truly took off. Apple Pippin. When you think Apple, you think of sleek design, innovation, and massive success. But back in 1996, Apple made a rare misstep with the Pippin, a multimedia console developed in partnership with Bandai. Designed as a hybrid between a video game system and a low-cost computer, the Pippin aimed to bring the internet and CD-ROM games into living rooms. It sounded futuristic, but the execution was everything but that. The console launched at a staggering $599, more than a PlayStation or even a basic home PC at the time. It ran on a stripped-down version of Mac OS, and its hardware was already outdated on arrival. Game support was abysmal, with only about 20 titles ever released in North America, many of which were educational or obscure Japanese imports. Even Bandai, Apple's partner in this venture, quickly realized the project was doomed. Developers weren't interested, and the name Pippin didn't exactly inspire confidence. Less than 50,000 units were ever sold worldwide, and Apple quietly abandoned the project just a year later. It's one of the few times Apple completely face-planted in the hardware world, and most people today don't even know it existed. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button down below. I'll be posting new videos here daily. Fairchild Channel F. Before the Atari 2600 revolutionized home gaming, the Fairchild Channel F made history as the first console to use interchangeable ROM cartridges. Launched in 1976, it was genuinely ahead of its time from a technical standpoint. But despite its innovation, the Channel F stumbled out of the gate and never fully recovered. The system's biggest problem? Timing. It hit the market just before the video game boom and lacked the firepower to compete once Atari entered the scene a year later. Its blocky graphics and limited sound were acceptable in 1976, but quickly felt ancient once the 2600 launched. Even the games, most of which were simple two-player titles, failed to captivate a wider audience. Its controllers were also undesirable, using a unique joystick-dial hybrid that confused many players. While the system introduced revolutionary ideas like a pause button and modular design, it simply couldn't keep pace with the explosion of the home gaming market. Fairchild managed to sell a few 100,000 units, but that wasn't nearly enough. By the end of the decade, the Channel F was discontinued, remembered more for what it started than how it ended. A pioneer, but a commercial misfire. Mattel Hyperscan. In 2006, Mattel, best known for Barbie and Hot Wheels, decided to take a shot at the video game market with the Hyperscan. Marketed towards kids and tweens, it promised a unique twist. Instead of just buying games, you'd also collect RFID character cards that could be scanned to unlock powers, items, and abilities. On paper, it was a blend of gaming and trading cards years before Skylanders or Amiibo, but in practice, it was a disaster. The Hyperscan's hardware was painfully underpowered, producing graphics that looked a generation behind even the PlayStation 1. The load times were agonizing, and the card scanning gimmick was inconsistent at best, sometimes failing to register cards at all. Only 5 games were ever released, including tie-ins for Ben 10 and X-Men, and they were universally panned for bad controls and repetitive gameplay. Retailers struggled to sell the system, even at its budget price of $69.99. Parents saw it as a cheap toy rather than a real console, and older gamers ignored it entirely. Within a year, Mattel quietly pulled the plug. Today, the Hyperscan is mostly remembered as an odd curiosity, proof that not every toy company can make the jump into gaming. Laser Active. In 1993, Pioneer launched the Laser Active, a console that combined video games with Laserdisc movies, aiming it to be the ultimate multimedia system. It sounded like the future. Crisp video quality, massive storage, and optional add-ons that let you play Sega Genesis or TurboGrafx-16 games. But there was a catch. Actually, several of them. First, the base system cost was $970, and that didn't include the game modules. If you wanted to play Sega or NEC games, you had to shell out another $600 per module. That's over $2,000 just to access multiple game libraries. And for all that money, what you got was oversized hardware and a confusing, bloated ecosystem. The actual Laser Active game library, total of only 18 titles, many of which were just awkward FMV games or edutainment discs. The system tried to appeal to high-end tech enthusiasts, but even they were hesitant to invest. Casual gamers didn't even give it a chance. With limited marketing, high costs, and 0 killer apps, the Laser Active faded quickly. It didn't just flop, it became one of the most expensive commercial failures in console history. Tapwave Zodiac. In 2003, a startup called Tapwave tried to take on both Nintendo and Palm with one device, the Zodiac. It was part handheld gaming console, part personal digital assistant, running on Palm OS but designed with hardcore gamers in mind. It had dual SD card slots, a sleek design, analog controls, and could even play MP3s and videos. It looked like a futuristic Game Boy killer, but that never happened. The Zodiac launched into a market already dominated by the Game Boy Advance and, soon after, the Nintendo DS and Sony PSP. While the hardware was impressive, the software support just wasn't there. Most of its games were basic mobile ports, and the few original titles didn't generate buzz. Worse, the reliance on Palm OS made development awkward and third-party support dried up fast. Marketing was limited, and most consumers had never even heard of the Zodiac. At a price point starting around $299, it was too expensive for casual gamers and too limited for hardcore gamers. By 2005, Tapwave shut down completely, and the Zodiac vanished almost overnight. It's a classic example of great hardware trapped in the wrong market at the wrong time. Intellivision Amico. The Intellivision Amico was supposed to revive a nostalgic brand for modern family gaming. Announced in 2018 by Tommy Tallarico, it promised simple, couch-friendly fun, no violence, no online toxicity, just wholesome entertainment. It featured unique touchscreen controllers, family-focused titles, and a sleek design. But 5 years later, there's still no Amico on store shelves, and the project has become a running joke in the gaming world. Originally set to launch in 2020, the Amico missed deadline after deadline. Manufacturing delays, shifting specs, and many other factors were all blamed, but the deeper problem was trust. The company kept taking pre-orders and investor funds while showing little tangible progress. Critics raised concerns about transparency, especially when prototype demos looked rough and developer support was nearly non-existent. Games shown off were mostly remakes of 40-year-old titles like Astro Smash and Shark Shark, and footage often featured placeholder art or mobile-level graphics. Even die-hard retro fans began to lose faith. By 2025, the Amico still hadn't launched, and most believed it never would. Game.com. Before smartphones were everywhere, Tiger Electronics tried to get ahead of the curve with the Game.com. Launched in 1997, it was marketed as a revolutionary handheld, one that could play games, connect to the internet, and even manage your calendar. It had a touchscreen and stylus before the Nintendo DS ever existed, but innovation alone wasn't enough to save it. The Game.com suffered from poor execution across the board. Its screen was low contrast and nearly impossible to see without direct lighting. The touchscreen was imprecise, the sound was odd, and the system only supported a 2-shade monochrome display. Even worse, the hardware was underpowered, making most games sluggish or outright broken. Tiger managed to secure some big-name licenses like Resident Evil 2, Sonic Jam, and Mortal Kombat Trilogy, but the ports were nearly unplayable. Internet access required a separate modem and phone line, and even then, all you could do was check text-based email. Within 2 years, the Game.com was pulled from shelves, having sold fewer than 300,000 units. Despite its ambition, it became a punchline, proof that just slapping features onto a handheld doesn't make it good. RCA Studio 2. In January 1977, RCA tried to break into the home gaming market with a Studio 2. Unfortunately, it launched just months after the much more advanced Fairchild Channel F, and a year before the Atari 2600 would dominate the space. From day one, the Studio 2 felt like a console stuck in the past. Its graphics were primitive, only black and white, with a blocky 64x32 resolution. There was no sound chip, so all audio came from the console's internal speaker, which emitted harsh, basic tones. Even the controller setup was bizarre. 2 built-in keypads with stiff membrane buttons instead of detachable joysticks. It was barely interactive by modern standards. To make things worse, the Studio 2 launched with a tiny library of mostly uninspired titles like Bowling, Edition, and Freeway. RCA hoped to market it as both an educational and entertainment device, but neither audience bought in. Sales were dismal, and by 1978, RCA had abandoned the system entirely. The Studio 2 was discontinued just a year after launch, making it one of the shortest-lived consoles ever. Today, it's mostly remembered as a huge flop to the entire gaming community. Let me know in the comments what you think the worst console launch was. Thanks for watching.